One night, a girl named Hikari was standing in front of her school while humming a tune. At that moment, Tatsuo, a math teacher at the school, happened to walk by and asked what she was doing there. Hikari was startled and looked completely panicked. The next day, the principal announced that a new teacher would be joining the staff that day. However, the new teacher still had not arrived, and the principal was surprised that someone could be late on their very first day of work. One of Tatsuo's colleagues asked if it was true that Tatsuo once researched demi-humans or Ajin. Tatsuo admitted that he had planned to make demi-humans the topic of his doctoral thesis, but since working with them involved many risks, ordinary teachers like him were not given permission to do so. In fact, he had never met a demi-human before. His colleague wondered why Tatsuo wanted to study them given how rare they were. Tatsuo explained that he had always wanted to interview one. Suddenly, the new teacher arrived and apologized for being late. The principal asked her to introduce herself. She explained that the train she took had been delayed due to an inspection, and it was extremely crowded. The principal understood and again asked her to introduce herself properly. Tatsuo found it odd since crowded trains were nothing unusual. His colleague, however, was not surprised because he already knew that the new teacher was a demi-human. The new teacher introduced herself as Sekie, a math teacher, and revealed that she was a succubus. Tatsuo was taken aback, realizing that he had just met a demi-human for the first time. In this world, there were people with extraordinary traits known as demi-humans. Some of the known types included succubi, vampires, and dullahans. They had long been part of folklore and legends. In the past, they were often mistreated, but discrimination against demi-humans had become rare in modern times. There were even organizations that helped those still struggling to live normal lives. For many, being a demi-human was simply seen as another part of one's identity. That day, students and teachers at Shibaseki High School were preparing for the opening ceremony of the new school year. Tatsuo approached Sakia to introduce himself, but she was clearly startled and nervous. When Tatsuo reached out his hand to greet her, Sakia panicked and accidentally dropped a ladder nearby. She quickly explained that, as a succubus, she dressed modestly and avoided physical contact with others to prevent any unintended reactions from her ability. Realizing his mistake, Tatsuo apologized for approaching her without understanding her situation. Sakia admitted that she had noticed Tatsuo watching her from afar earlier and assumed that he had only come to her out of curiosity. Feeling awkward, she excused herself and left. Tatsuo felt bad afterward, believing that she had simply misunderstood his intentions. A few days later, Tatsuo happened to run into Sakie near the school's sink area. He tried to apologize again for the previous incident, but Sakie assured him that it was fine and that he did not need to worry about it anymore. Moments later, Hikari appeared, calling out for a teacher. She was surprised to see Tatsuo standing there. Tatsuo immediately recognized her as the girl he had seen outside the school that night. It turned out that Hikari was a new student at Shibaseki High. Curious, Tatsuo asked why she had been at the school that late at night, even though the opening ceremony had not yet taken place. Hikari cheerfully explained that she had been trying on her new uniform at home and had gotten so excited about starting school that she wanted to visit right away. Tatsuo found her reasoning amusing but could not understand why she had run away when he tried to talk to her that night. According to Hikari, anyone would run if a strange older man suddenly talked to them in the dark because that was what she had been taught at school. She even said that Tatsuo should praise her for making the right decision and reacting quickly in that kind of situation. And Hikari suddenly remembered that one of her classmates was not feeling well, so she asked Tatsuo to help her take that student to the student infirmary. Tatsuo agreed and followed her. On the way, Hikari introduced herself as a student from Class 1B. When they arrived at the classroom, Tatsuo was surprised to see that Hikari's friend had no head. Hikari explained that her friend was a dullahan, a type of demi-human whose head was separated from their body. Hikari had already taken her friend's head to the infirmary earlier, but she had struggled to carry the body because it was too heavy. Tatsuo was amazed to realize that there were now 2 demi-humans at the school. He curiously asked if it was safe to touch the small blue flame that flickered at the dullahan's neck. Not long after, another student, a snow girl, was carried past them toward the infirmary because she was feeling dizzy. Tatsuo could hardly believe that demi-humans were appearing at the school one after another. While helping Hikari's friend, he asked why Hikari seemed so calm and not at all surprised to see other demi-humans. Hikari smiled and admitted that although demi-humans were rare, she was not surprised at all, because she herself was one too, a vampire. When Tatsuo arrived at the student infirmary, he was left speechless, still trying to process what had just happened. Hikari walked up to him and explained that the snow girl had simply overheated during PE class while the dullahan had just caught a cold. Tatsuo couldn't believe how easily he had come across demi-humans, and he was still in shock about the whole situation. Hikari then asked whether Tatsuo disliked demi-humans. Tatsuo quickly denied it. In fact, he admitted that he liked them. He had always wanted to meet one, but had never succeeded before, so he was genuinely happy to finally encounter them. Hearing that made Hikari smile. She hadn't expected him to feel that way, and her face turned slightly red as she realized how much it meant to him. Hikari then told him that the term Ajin was old-fashioned and not really used anymore. It sounded too serious, she said, so schoolgirls nowadays preferred to call them demis. The next day, Tatsuo saw Hikari trying to borrow a book from her younger sister. When Tatsuo approached, Hikari quickly introduced her. Her name was Himari from Class 1C, and the two of them were twins. Himari finally agreed to lend the book but reminded Hikari not to scribble on it. Tatsuo commented that Himari seemed more responsible and that she apparently wasn't a demi like Hikari. A bit shyly, Tatsuo asked Hikari if she could tell him more about vampires. To his surprise, she agreed and promised to come to the biology room later. Tatsuo was thrilled to hear that. Hikari's friend, the Dullahan named Kyoko, was chatting with some classmates. They were curious about how she got to school. Did she take the bus? They wondered. But Kyoko explained that she usually walked because the buses were too crowded in the mornings, which made it dangerous for her since she always had to carry her head in her hands. Hearing that made her friends a little uneasy, so they quickly changed the topic to something lighter, like watching cute cat videos online. In most cases, being a demi wasn't something inherited. It happened due to a genetic mutation. That meant even twins could be different, with only one of them being a demi. Tatsuo still didn't really understand how demis lived their daily lives, how they thought, or how they interacted with others. There were so many questions running through his mind. That day, Hikari came to the biology room. She loved how cool, dark, and comfortable the place was. Tatsuo realized that vampires were sensitive to heat. Hikari said that the sunlight in her classroom was too bright and that she didn't want to bother her classmates by asking to block it, so she preferred to spend time in the biology room instead. Hikari reminded Tatsuo that he wanted to interview her, encouraging him to get started. Tatsuo handed her a book about vampire legends and asked what she thought of it. As Hikari flipped through the pages, she pointed out a few things that didn't really fit her experience. For example, she actually liked garlic and wasn't affected by crosses. Showing one of the pages, she joked that maybe she would die if someone pierced her heart, but that was probably true for anyone. Tetsuo then asked if vampires really needed to drink blood to survive. Hikari said she didn't think that was the case. She explained that vampires sometimes suffered from a condition similar to anemia, which was why they avoided sunlight. As long as they managed their diet well, they were perfectly fine. In fact, Hikari enjoyed eating liver with onions and drinking tomato juice since its flavor reminded her of blood. Hearing that, Tatsuo realized that vampires did indeed have a natural urge to drink blood. Hikari admitted that was true, but she also mentioned that the government provided blood packs to vampires, 1 pack per month, as part of a support program. Tetsuo remembered hearing about a vampire who lived without any government-supplied blood and asked Hikari what she thought about that. She said that such a vampire must be really impressive. When Tatsuo started to wrap up the interview, Hikari begged him to keep going so she could stay in the biology room a bit longer. Then she suddenly asked what he thought about vegetarians. Tatsuo replied that he thought vegetarians were admirable. Hikari smiled and said that it was kind of the same as vampires who chose not to rely on the government's blood supply. Curious, Tatsuo asked if she had ever wanted to drink blood directly from a person, since there were rumors that anyone bitten by a vampire would either turn into one or become their servant. Hikari admitted that she had thought about it before, though only out of curiosity. She'd never actually done it. Hikari told Tatsuo about the snow girl who was once taken to the student infirmary. The girl's name was Yuki, and her body was extremely cold. Because of that, Hikari often couldn't resist touching her. When Hikari noticed Yuki's neck, she started feeling curious and imagined how warm blood might be compared to Yuki's cold skin. At that moment, she realized she wanted to see Yuki's reactions to her playful teasing. However, Hikari knew she could never actually do something that might scare or upset her friend, since that would only make Yuki dislike her. Tatsuo thought that Hikari's imagination sounded a bit inappropriate, though Hikari herself didn't seem to notice it. He then asked if she had ever sucked blood from someone of the opposite gender. Hikari quickly denied it. Tatsuo asked again if she might prefer the blood of girls instead, but Hikari shook her head, saying maybe it was just because she had never fallen in love before. That made Tatsuo realize that for vampires like Hikari, drinking blood might have a deeper emotional meaning rather than just instinct. You could tell she didn't really take it too seriously, though she did hesitate a bit when he mentioned the idea of drinking blood from a man. Hikari was surprised that Tatsuo figured that out so quickly. According to Hikari, drinking blood directly from someone felt like something too intense, even cruel, and she wasn't the type to do that to others. She was dependable and kind, which made it difficult for her to even imagine doing such a thing. Tetsuo smiled as he looked at Hikari. She assumed he must be thinking about how fun it was to be young, while he was already a full-grown adult. Tetsuo just laughed at her comment. He could tell that Hikari was simply going through a normal stage of adolescence. Tetsuo then said it was time to end their conversation since he had to prepare for his next class. Hikari still wanted to chat more, but as the bell rang, Tetsuo gently told her to return to class. Hikari agreed, but before leaving, she playfully glanced at Tetsuo's neck and leaned in slowly, pretending as if she was going to bite him. Tetsuo was caught off guard and Hikari burst out laughing. He told her not to joke around like that, and she giggled, teasing that what she did earlier was kind of silly. When class ended later, Kyoko packed up her books. Not long after, Hikari came over to see her. Hikari asked how Kyoko was doing, saying that being her must be tough since she always had to carry her head around. She imagined how difficult it must be after school, holding her bag in one hand and her head in the other sounded dangerous. Kyoko was touched by Hikari's concern. She said she'd have gotten used to it, though she admitted it could be a little inconvenient at times. Hikari said she could understand because as a vampire, she also had her own struggles. She explained that she couldn't handle sunlight at all, and during summer, she couldn't even wear short sleeves because it felt unbearable. Kyoko laughed softly, saying that sounded troublesome. They both ended up laughing together about how unfair the world could be to them. Kyoko then asked where Hikari had gone during the lunch break. Feeling a bit shy, Hikari told her the whole story. Earlier that day, Kyoko had gone to the biology lab without bringing her head, which surprised Tetsuo. She handed him a letter she had written. Hikari and Kyoko's head were secretly watching from behind the door. In the letter, Kyoko thanked Tetsuo for helping carry her body to the student infirmary when she had a fever. She also wrote that Hikari had told her about him, and she asked if it would be alright for her to come by and chat with him sometime. Tetsuo wrote his response on the same letter and handed it back to her. Kyoko was a little startled when he gently touched her hand. After that, Kyoko and Hikari left the lab and went outside the school gates. They'd opened the letter to read his reply, and it said that Tetsuo would be happy to talk with her anytime. They both got really excited about it. Hikari was so overjoyed that she invited Kyoko to go have tea together to celebrate.